And now it is time for the meditation. This meditation was given to me by the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh at a retreat in the Rocky Mountains. And I found it to be a very calming and strengthening experience for the last few years. And it also works well with children. So let's come in to the present moment. Becoming aware of your breath, just breathing in and out normally and gently. As we come in to the presence of Spirit, of God, that loving, healing presence, ever present. And feeling the calmness of that presence, opening our hearts, quieting our minds. I invite you to say to yourself, I am blooming as a flower. I am fresh as the dew. I am blooming as a flower. I am fresh as the dew. I am blooming as a flower. I am fresh as the dew. I am solid as a mountain. I am solid as a mountain. I am solid as a mountain. I am firm as the earth. I am firm as the earth. And I am water reflecting what is real and what is true. I am water reflecting what is real and what is true. I am water reflecting what is real and what is true. And I know there is space deep inside of me. I am free, I am free, I am free. I know there is space deep inside of me. I am free, I am free, I am free. And I know there is space deep inside of me. I am free, I am free, I am free. And now let us experience some moments of silence. And in that silence, I invite you to experience with your senses the beauty of the flower, its fragrance, the solidness of the mountain, the firmness of the earth beneath your feet and within yourself, the water that reflects your truth and the truth of Spirit, and the space deep inside of you filled with the light and the freedom of Spirit. And now holding perhaps any images that came to you to take into the week with you and your life, remembering we are surrounded by love and light. We are surrounded by the beauty and freshness of the flowers, by the solidness of the mountains, the firmness of the earth, the truth reflected, and our spaciousness. And we say, thank you, Spirit, and so it is.
I'd like to welcome you today. Do appreciate you coming out this morning. I wanted to mention a few things before I get started. First of all, thanks for the great response on the fishing gear we collected for Above the Clouds. Had just an enormous response. You can see that receptacle back there is full of fishing rods. And we didn't have room for all the tackle boxes that went with it. So thank you so much. I know that'll be a thrill to Lala, who heads up that organization, and can't wait to tell her this week, we got bukus of fishing gear for you. So thank you. And starting next month will be, your generosity is so wonderful. Next month we'll be collecting backpacks, for school kids that are in need. And you're just a generous bunch of people, I got to tell you. Nothing cheap about you. And I do appreciate you so much. Just between us. We're going to honor Candy today because she will be leaving us soon. And we've got a surprise party for her after the second service downstairs. And second service, I'm going to bring in here and really freak her out and, encourage, just kind of recognize her 9 years of blessed service in our house. So keep that under your hat, all right? But do remember, and if you can join us for the party afterwards, I know that'd be a thrill for Kenny. We're going to have a money tree for her to, provide her, some extra financial assistance in her move as she moves near Vegas. We know she'll need more money going near Vegas, right? Heard about a man who was working in his backyard one day. And his neighbor began talking to him over the fence. He said, yeah, my wife and I went to one of those seminars yesterday, where they teach you ways to improve your memory. His neighbor commented, really, what was the name of the speaker? The man answered, what's the name of that flower that smells so good and has thorns? You mean a rose? Yeah, that's it. He called over his shoulder, hey, Rose, what was the name of that speaker we heard yesterday? Definitely some memory work to be done. But I got to thinking how remembrance can help us, or times it can hurt us in our spiritual path. And we want to look at that. Keep that in mind, remembrance, as we look at today's message. When he talked about friends in high places, ? See? ? Remember Garth Brooks' famous huge hit for him, kind of his breakout hit, I Got Friends in Low Places. Remember that? I remember it was one of the saddest things, and yet at the same time one of the most hilarious things I've ever experienced. I was called to do the funeral of a young man who just suddenly passed, very young, tragically passed away. And his family essentially had no family in his life. His mother, I think, was a drug addict, had nothing to do with him. He was on his own. And his friends had to organize his funeral. His teenage friends put together his funeral. You can imagine. Bless their hearts, but they did the best they knew how. But here I was, conservative at the time, evangelical minister sitting there, and suddenly this song comes on the speaker. Blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots. I thought, oh, my God. They're going to play Friends in Low Places at the kid's funeral. But they did the best they knew how, all right? And I've loosened up since then anyway. But Garth, spoke of friends in low places, which really weren't his friends. It was actually not a good strategy for coping with his loss. But we want to look at what does it mean, friends in high places, and whether they're actually friends at all. I want to talk to you this morning. It's going to center around the person of King Josiah. And King Josiah is not nearly as well known as many of the other figures in the Jewish scriptures, Abraham or Moses or David. Yet King Josiah did something that none of them ever did. And so we want to focus on him today and the metaphysical significance of what his life meant and what he did and what it meant. Now, Josiah was the 16th king of Judah. Israel and Judah had separated after the reign of Solomon, and Judah and Benjamin, featuring preeminently Judah, was the southern kingdom. Israel composed the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom. And Josiah was the 16th king of the southern kingdom of Judah. He became the king at the age of 8. And after the assassination of his father, King Amon. And Josiah reigned for 31 years. Now, let's read from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary concerning the significance of Josiah. Josiah means the one whom Yahweh supports. And it signifies that in consciousness, which connects itself with spirit and tries to carry out the divine plan, to substitute being for seeming. The significance of the fact that Josiah began his reign very young is that in order to bring the whole person into harmony with truth and demonstrate perfection, one must begin to act on and be loyal to, get this, one's first impressions and concept of truth. One's first impression and concepts of truth. Keep that in mind, first impressions. In fact, say that with me, first impressions. Keep that in mind as we go. It's going to be very significant in our understanding. Now, Josiah was significant in that he performed a remarkable achievement that nobody else had done. In 1 Kings 23 and verse 8, the scripture tells us he broke down the high places. He broke down the high places. Well, what's wrong with high places? Sounds good to me. Isn't that what we want? Well, high places may sound good, but they actually weren't good, as we will see. High places were common among the worshipers of Canaanite deities in that day. They were places that were erected in the mountains or higher elevations, that is high, because it was believed that the deities hovered up above. And there are many people that still believe that. There are many people still believe that God is up in the sky. How many know that has actually scientifically been proven to be incorrect? How many know when the sky was actually penetrated by our astronauts, by the first astronauts, did he find a celestial throne? Did they find those little naked babies flying around? No, didn't see any of that. What did they find? The vastness and emptiness of space. So God or deities don't dwell in the sky, the extended outer atmosphere of the ever-expanding universe. But it was believed that if you went to the higher elevation, you would find the deities. And that's what the high places were about. Now, the high places were valued by those that worshiped Canaanite deities. It was never anything authorized by Yahweh to the people of Israel. And Judah started erecting high places to their God, Yahweh, to imitate their neighbors. Because they got to look at, hey, they got high places to their gods. We should have high places to ours. Seemed to make sense at the time. But how many know there's a big difference between being an imitator or an innovator? Isn't that true? How many know the temptation to imitate cannot always be a good thing? How many know if I got to be like them? It's not necessarily a good thing, is it? It can be, or it can be very detrimental, especially when we get caught up in, I've got to be like my neighbor. I got to at least catch up to them. This can be a trap in and of itself. Judah started erecting high places to Yahweh to imitate their neighbors. Now, interestingly, Yahweh, or the Hebrew name for God, never ordered high places or approved of them. And they eventually degenerated into human and child sacrifice. They started out seeming kind of innocent. They didn't end up being that way. And Josiah was the one who finally said, enough of these high places. They're coming down. I'm going Josiah on them, and I'm taking them down. And he did for the first time. And he's highly recognized and commended to this day because he was the first one to eliminate the high places. Interestingly, high places were actually low places that brought the people down, but they didn't see that. They just saw the need to imitate their neighbors. Now, this is something I came up with. Check this out. When low places become high places, our lives are turned upside down. I made that up. I'll say it again. When low places become high places, our lives are turned upside down. That make sense? That would make a great slogan. Maybe too big for a bumper sticker, but it's pretty cool, I think. When low places become high places, our lives are turned upside down. In other words, what is low down and destructive can become prominent and high in our consciousness. Even though it's bad for us, it's very prominent in here, you see. And it's a high place that we need to remove, as we shall see. What are the high places that we must deal with? Well, there's a verse in 2 Corinthians 10, very significant, I want to share with you. Paul writing here, "Indeed, we live as humans, but do not wage war according to human standards. For the weapons of our warfare are not merely human, but they have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every high thing raised up against the knowledge of God. We take every thought captive to obey the Christ." And this is very significant. He talks about here what spiritual warfare involves and what the weapons of that warfare are. Because we don't wage war according to human standards. Our fight's not against flesh and blood, you see. When we get that in our minds that our fight is with other people, then we lose out completely on the understanding of what it's all about, don't we? And we diminish ourselves. Because it's not warfare against others. It's warfare against strongholds of thought that establish themselves to bring us down, you see. The weapons of our warfare are not harm, but they have divine power to destroy strongholds. Say stronghold. Stronghold is a strong place of thinking that can be very entrenched and that we got to take down. We destroy arguments. Somebody said, well, that's the power to argue with people. That's not what it is at all. And every high thing raised against, again, there's that high word again, against the knowledge of God. And this is very significant. We take every thought captive. In the original Greek language, this literally means prisoners of war. Our thoughts must become like prisoners of war that we got to catch and contain and keep them from doing any harm to us. All right? I remember the show Hogan's Heroes. I used to love that. I never missed it as a kid. I still like it to this day. And remember that? The prisoners of war actually ran the prison camp. Remember that? Colonel Klink was an idiot. And, you know, he couldn't run things, and Colonel Hogan really ran the place. And so we, as in the prisoner of war camp, we must not let our thoughts dominate and run us like the inmate, the residents of Stalag 13. So let's look at the progression of how high places come to be established. First of all, there are thoughts we have that are opposed to the Christ within us. Thoughts like, you're such a loser, or nothing works out for you. My mother, bless her heart, she'd never been very diligent in her life. She made an attempt to get a job, didn't get hired, and she said, oh, nothing ever works out for me. But Mom, you only tried one. But in her mind, that was it. That was proof. That was a stronghold of her mind, that nothing would ever work out. There are many people that have bought into that. You're a loser. Nothing works for you. That is a thought opposed to the Christ within us, isn't it? Then there's arguments. And again, that's not the ability to argue with people. How many know that's not a great ability to have? There's some people that treasure that. I can insult people like nobody else. Is that a great power you take pride in? Bless your heart. You need help. But what's talking about argument is arguments in court. Arguments made by attorneys. This is what it's referring to. Just like in court, what we can do if we're not careful, we make a case against ourselves. We argue against ourselves in the court of our minds. And we pronounce sentence upon ourselves as loser, or nothing works out, or, you're not smart, you're not pretty, you're not whatever. These arguments that we make against ourselves in our own mind. And they become high things, high places in our consciousness, don't they? There's times we say, well, here are all the facts that prove that you're a loser and a failure. See? Our minds make this argument against ourselves. And then remembrances. Well, remember how you screwed up here? That proves that that's the way you are. These arguments that come to us. Remembrances of mistakes of the past. And because we made a mistake, well, we're condemned to it forever. No, not at all. But these are arguments in our minds, aren't they? And then there's the devil. How many are familiar with the devil? Or as in my background, you said, the devil. That this omnipresent being that's constantly there to harass and harangue us. But in actuality, it's not the devil that's with me all the time, it's me. And therein lies the problem. Remember Flip Wilson's famous saying, the devil made me do it. How convenient that is, isn't it? To be able to put it off on an imaginary devil. But that's really not where the problem lies. Eckhart Tolle said, what a liberation to realize that the voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that. Pretty cool. I'll say that again because I love to say it. What a liberation to realize the voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that. The one who sees it's not a devil that's my problem. The problem is me. And arguments I make and strongholds of thought in me, therein lies the problem. Can't put it off on anybody else. Now, concerning the devil, this is again from Unity founder Charles Fillmore. The devil represents the massive thoughts that have been built up in consciousness through many generations of earthly experiences, remembrances, and crystallized into what may be termed human personality or carnal mind, which opposes and rejects God. The devil is a state of consciousness adverse to the divine good. Other names for this state of consciousness are the adversary, carnal mind, the accuser, the old man. There is no personal devil. God is the one omnipresent principle of the universe, and there is no room for any principle of evil, personified or otherwise. Can't blame it on the devil. The problem is in my consciousness and my thinking, and I have the power to deal with that and correct it. We all do. Listen to Dr. David Dillard Wright wrote concerning defeating the inner enemy. The inner enemy alone keeps us from true illumination. This inner enemy, the ego nature or the self, leads to the path of least resistance, the easy way that sacrifices the goal in favor of easy pleasures. The inner enemy also attributes blame to other people when we fail to realize the goal, getting us to conform to what we think other people want from us. In order to achieve freedom or liberation, we have to hold fast to the inner light rather than looking toward the ego and its schemes. It's difficult to realize that the greatest threat to me is me. Isn't that right? We got to realize our own consciousness, the arguments we make against ourselves, entrenched thinking, this is the enemy that must be defeated. And then he goes on in this progression to stronghold. It starts with a thought, then it becomes an argument, and many of us, it creates a stronghold. A stronghold is symbolic of a fortress. In warfare, the greatest, the most sensible way to defend against an enemy was to establish a fortress on a hill. It was very easy to defend and very difficult for an enemy to take down. Likewise, these thought patterns in our lives become strongholds that become thoroughly established and are determined not to go anywhere. And they become high places that keep us down in our lives. But we can reverse this process. That's the good news. We can reverse this process of the progression of thought and argument and stronghold, and we can undo it. reading again from Mr. Fillmore, the purging of Judah and Jerusalem in the 12th year of the reign of King Josiah signifies a systematic denial of errors of thought and practice that had become habitual in both the objective and the subjective consciousness. After purging the mind of error by denial, we should see to it we put the builders to work upon the temple. These builders are affirmations. Unity's big on denials and affirmations, aren't we? We don't deny the existence of bad stuff or bad thoughts, but we deny their power to dominate our consciousness and our lives. And we affirm great truth in their place. Isn't that right? That's the way we change this process. Number one, catch that thought as early as you can. Don't let it dwell. Don't let it hang out. Josiah began his reign at age 8, signifying start quick and young. Isn't that right? Start as soon as you can. When you have a thought come to you that you know is an argument against you and who you really are, deal with it right then. Don't dwell on it. Don't let it become entrenched in your thinking. Mr. Fillmore said, in order to bring the whole person into harmony with truth and demonstrate perfection, one must begin to act on and be loyal to one's first impressions and concepts of truth. First impressions. Don't wait. Keep it from increasing to a high thing. But what if it's already a stronghold? Because early on, we don't know this. We just, thoughts come to us and we tend to just let them hang around. What if it's already a stronghold? Well, the good news, we can still pull that sucker down. We can go what I call go Josiah on it. Isn't that right? And take that sucker down like Josiah did. Enough! This ends now. We can be that with the strongholds in our thinking. We can take down even what's entrenched in our minds. I realized a thought pattern that I had developed from my childhood. Because how many know our thoughts are like prisoners of war, and we catch them, but sometimes they escape. Isn't that right? And we got to catch them again. Times some thoughts are like that. But I had a thought pattern that I didn't realize I had developed from my childhood. My mother was married. Her second husband was a very abusive, mean, and nasty man. And he would, physically abuse her, and he couldn't catch me. Otherwise, I think he would have hit me too, but I could outrun him. But my mother would leave this man, and I'd get my hopes up. Now life's going to be better. And then she'd go back to him. And this happened again and again and again. And I realized I developed a thought pattern that, well, even when things seem to be better, they're going to get bad again. This became a stronghold in my young mind. And it's something I still deal with today. Well, okay, it's good, but it's going to get bad again. I deal with that. It's a stronghold I recognize I have to go Josiah on and take down. Because I believe in the increasing goodness of God in my life. I affirm that. But it is a stronghold, and you may have thought patterns like that too, that you realize maybe are unconscious of. Wait a minute, why do I think that? Why do I think it's got to get bad when it gets good? That's a stronghold, you see. And we can go Josiah on it and take it down. But it takes diligent effort, doesn't it? It's not a casual thing. It's something we have to focus on and regularly make a part of our life and our consciousness. Isn't that true? I considered thought patterns I had unwittingly allowed to continue, and I'm on top of them now. And so we need to each assess, what is it? Is there a stronghold in my consciousness? Is there a high place that I need to deal with? And God will enable us and help us to do that. Isn't that true? Stand with me if you would. Let's make our affirmation in closing. Repeat after me if you'd be so kind. I deny errors of thought and practice. I affirm dominance over my thoughts. I pull down any strongholds I find. I go Josiah on the false high places. Take those suckers down. Bless you. You can have your seats.